and I found that most podcasts use this mic. So I said, all right, I'll just use the one I already have.
Yeah, it's actually really funny. I used to date a DJ who would do shows, online shows, and she had one of these. And lo and behold, when my CEO started doing some podcasts and interviews, one of these showed up in the office. I was like, yeah, I know how those things work.
Well, it's a great one. We're not going to go into the relationship.
Yeah, that one wasn't a great one. That one wasn't a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like usually DJs and strippers, they are the long-term relationships. They work out really well.
Exactly. I mean, it's down home stuff, really, is what it is. It's traditional American values.
Traditional American values. So I've got some good questions for you. We had a nice intro call yesterday to say hello. And I want to know, how did you know that it was right to do this with Baker? Like when you saw that everyone was going into this cannabis industry, and what made you think like, oh, customer loyalty / point of sale, customer data? Like what made you think that?
I wish I could tell you that we had it all figured out from the start, but much like any other business, we started with a small piece of it and then listened to our customers. So what we started with was the online ordering portion of what we do today. And as we came to grow and speak to more dispensaries, we realized that the issue that we sought out to fix, we identified the problem as a too much demand, not enough supply for product. But at the same time, after rolling out the online ordering, which was the solution for that, we saw that the market shift was happening and that market saturation was coming down the line. So we realized, oh, we're about to lose, our market, and we need to figure out how to continue to grow. And that's when the whole how do you continue to engage and retain your customers became the main problem that we decided to solve. And that's where the loyalty platform came in.
Ooh, yeah, because new markets are always volatile.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, the marijuana market, cannabis market, is something that changes on a day-to-day basis. There's a joke that kind of most of the companies in the space like to make, which is that the cannabis industry works in dog years. So us being around 3.5 years makes us 20+ year veterans of the space.
Absolutely, because there's no one else to leverage the experience from. You guys have it all.
Exactly right. I mean, there are some companies that have been around a little bit longer, and we spoke about the point of sale market a little bit yesterday. Those guys have been around a little bit longer, but they're dealing with a very specific subset of the needs in this space from a technology perspective. The rest of us, it's been, we watched the industry grow. We watched it kind of become a thing, and there's been a lot of adjustment necessary.
I love when I hear you say things like, well, like any business, we started out and we had an idea and then we got some people and then we just listened to our customers, because that is so rare. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, like, everything you read, everything people tell you is revolves around that, and I feel like it's a very simple concept to grasp. But one of the things that I continue to talk about these days, and I spend a lot of time thinking about, is ego, right? And to have the ego to think that you know the best solution to this industry that you've never been a part of is just, ridiculous. So to be able to go in and say, hey, we think we have a solution for this initial problem, that gets our foot in the door. Now tell me what you need. And we, I think, are arguably the largest, in my mind, the best technology team in the industry. So to have the sort of resources to say, okay, you have this problem, we'll address that problem. We'll fix that for you. We'll roll it into our roadmap, and then we'll roll it out to you, and then we continue to iterate in that same process, that same manner, and that's gotten us to where we're at today.
So did you start this on the idea, like did you start it when you knew that the legality was coming down the pipeline, like it was going to be legal, or did you start it after it was legal?
We started it right after the regulations passed for Colorado and Washington. So the vote passed, and we knew that it was going to happen. And we identified, actually, the origin story of Baker is pretty funny. I have two co-founders, and we met in New York City. We were all working at a co-working space together. Through a series of events. I ended up sitting next to them. I'd met the guys, but I'd never really worked with them. I was working on my previous startup, and they were working on theirs. And I overheard them having a conversation about an event for cannabis legalization regulations. And at the time, I was already thinking about getting into the industry, and I had an idea. And so I kind of butt into their conversation and asked them what they were talking about. After a few minutes, realized that their idea was way better than my idea. And as it turns out, they were a business guy and a product/design guy. And I was like, well, I'm your tech guy. So we literally started the company that day. It was something where like just these, worlds collided. We were in the right place, the right time. We were all thinking about the same thing. And we identified that with legalization, there was going to be a need for tools in this space, in the immediate future.
Oh, so smart. I love hearing the stories like that. And then you had great team, A team, and you've been in product for a long time. Like technology teams developing products is nothing that was new to you, right?
Oh no, I mean I graduated a computer science degree from Duke University in 2000 at the peak of the dot-com bubble. So
Yeah.
and I was working professionally even before then, even while I was in school. I interned at Lucent Technologies, and I'd been doing side projects and working at different tech centers on campus. So yeah, I've got over 20 years of experience of doing this, and it's been in everything from large multinational consulting firms to my own very small firm out of Los Angeles. But even with that firm, I was working with, the financial institutions and with entertainment brands and automotive companies. So, I came to the table with 20 years of experience of having done this before.
Yeah. And it's, so I am going through getting my experience, right? I'm about 16, 17 years into it. And so I was reflecting back on it. And I like when I'm talking to people like you that have large amounts of experience, because you kind of see you have all these different skills and you kind of grow them. Like if it's a video game, you have, different skill levels and you're improving each one. And I find that the easiest one for me to improve was the technical knowledge, like the how to write the good code and how to learn those types of things. And the ones that took the most effort were the people things, like how to understand people, how to make them feel heard, how to communicate effectively, those types of qualities. What do you think?
I think about that quite a bit, and in the position that I'm in right now, where our company is right at 60 people, my team alone is 14, not including myself. I'm in a position where I continue to evaluate how do I provide value to my team. And the short answer is supporting my people and ensuring that they have a growth path that is outlined for them, and they know what their next steps are, and that they have a motivation to get to that point. And I look back on why I feel that way, and it's all the experiences I had over the years as an engineer working somewhere. I think one of my earliest at my earliest job when I was back at Sapient, I spent 3.5 years as a senior engineer and never got promoted because I also have a visual design degree. So they were using me as a designer, as a front end developer, as a back end developer. And after 3.5 years, I wasn't getting promoted because of the fact that I was spending too much time in each of one of the different disciplines and not enough time in one. And that just felt like a slap in the face to me, that like I was able to be flexible and to contribute in different ways, and to not have a career path in front of me because of that seemed like counterintuitive. So experiences like that along my career helped me identify that what people need is, one, they need to be autonomous, they need to be given purpose, they need to know that what they're doing is contributing to the overall good of the product in the company, but also they need to know what the next step is. They need to know where they're shooting for as far as a year, 2 years, 3 years on the line. And I think at startups, it's easy to lose sight of that. Everyone is so just focused on, we have 8 months of roadmap, we have 6 months of roadmap, we have 18 months of roadmap, and runway rather. And to not think about where your people are going to be, I think is a real disservice to your company, because that's how you lose good talent.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Roger. Yeah, making, and this is something I guess you're experiencing now. And the first thing I noticed is that you're kind of designing your company for the way you would want it to be, right? Like if you think you're being anthropomorphic and thinking about, if I was an engineer working at my company, how would I want to, it to be? You're doing that with all of your different divisions, by developing your growth paths and really caring about the people. And it's so rewarding to care about people. Like, it actually feels really good.
I completely agree, and it's really interesting in that I was the founder who came to Denver first. We started the company in New York, and we realized that if we were going to be successful, I had to be in Denver. One of us had to be in Denver, pretty early on. And just due to the situation at the time, I was the one who had the most flexibility. So I literally got in my car and drove out to Denver. And I was like, all right, I'm here. At the time, we had one intern, and it was myself and this intern, and we were doing everything, obviously selling, building, what have you. But because of that, I've always been the founder that everyone would see in house, and it kind of put me in a position of being, Baker Dad. It's kind of a funny hashtag that we have here. I've just been dad to these people for so long, and also, I'm one of the older people at the office in the company. So, and I take that role very seriously in that, like, I treat them, as you said, as I would like to be treated myself. But I also, want to make sure that that they're learning what they need to learn in order to be able to drive their career themselves, whether it's here or not.
Yes. That's it. That's all I have to say is yes. So meritocracy has been a pretty popular buzzword recently because of that one investor guy's book, Principles. Have you come across that word a lot lately?
I think about it a lot. That's how I think, in an ideal world, that's how organizations should be run. And I see that, within my own team here. We have, the age range of my team is anywhere from mid 40s all the way down to about 23. And the position a person holds really has very little correlation to their age. It really has to do with who's willing to step up, who's doing the best work, who's going out there and teaching themselves new things and bringing that to the table, and really, owning what they're doing. And then those are the people that rise to the top. I've worked in a lot of, not in, but with a lot of financial institutions, for example. And it seems like there you see the exact opposite. As long as you're willing to put in the time, as long as you're willing to put up with the pain, you're going to rise through the ranks. And honestly, I don't see that leading to very many happy people. I've got friends, graduating from a school like Duke in 2000. I'd say, 9 out of 10 of my friends all went to be investment bankers. That's just, what they did. It's what you did when you graduated from school like that at that time. I was definitely the outlier. And I look back on the career of so many of those friends, and half of them are miserable. They're very wealthy, they're very high up in their positions, and it's almost as if they can't afford to quit this job they hate. So, I want to make sure that we don't end up with anyone in that position. And, meritocracy, as much as some people would say it's an idealistic sort of situation, I think is part of a small organization where it's very clear who the best contributors are, I think is a great way to let people shine.
Well, yeah, and it's very motivating too to know that if I put in effort and I'm creative and I go and learn more outside of my work, if I decide to use my free time to improve my skills versus running off and starting a startup and leaving the company, if I just improve my skills to be more valuable at that organization, then I can go places safely. I can rise through that organization safely without the risk of having to go off and do a startup or something like that. I mean, it's very motivating for your team to want to be better because they already have a platform where if they put more work into themselves, they will go farther.
I completely agree. And, to see other people go through that, right? To see, we have, several young folks in our organization who came in, as support people, and then they showed a real penchant, as it were, for product and understanding how a product works and understanding the shortcomings. But not just that, figuring out how do you work around these shortcomings? How do you communicate with our customers that might be struggling at the time? That, yes, what you're looking for may not exist right now, but if you do this, that, and the other, you can work around that situation. And, a lot of those folks are in our product organization now, because that's the kind of thinking you want in a product organization. You want people to understand and not butt heads with your product. You want them to be able to go in and understand it well enough that they can provide a solution, whether or not they're developers. So, I feel like that's another way in which you see someone who merits that position. It's like this, they earned it. And everyone in the organization, there's no question as to why that person's there. They've seen the history, they've seen the work they put in, they know why they got to that place.
All right, so you're making me think all sorts of thoughts. I like Roger. Okay. So this just popped into my head randomly, and I want to know, I guess the way I'll state it is like this. So I have a problem that I'm getting over, or something that I'm working on, right? And here's what it is. My dad took me to work with him at a very young age, like 8 years old. He was taking me to work like way before that, like 6 years old or whatever. But around 8, he started putting me like in the cubicle, and then giving me a terminal to play with, right? And I played some Carmen Sandiego on like a massive floppy disk, right? And some things like that. And then I started getting interested in doing more because there was only like 6 floppy disks I had. What are the big discs called? Do we know what the big ones? The big ones are they're both floppy. It's just the
They're
5.5 inch. Okay, cool. Right. So I had a couple of games on the big floppies, and I was playing them, and then I got bored, and then so I started like, oh, like look at this screen. Looks like a movie. I can type things into it and make it say hello back to me, and then I started writing little functions and things like that. So then by the age of 10, I'm like full on programming, like that's all I really care about in life, right? And then I'm writing code, and I start actually writing code that's being used in systems by 13, 14 as an intern for that company, just unofficially, right? Because of child labor reasons. So, so then I'm like, so I'm always the young one, right? I'm always like oh, look, it's Mitch's kid that he's bringing to work, and oh, yeah, like let him sit over there in the corner, like, oh, watch this, you go give him this task, he can do it. And I just like, for me, it was no different than when I went home after and played video games, right? It was just the same thing to me. So I was always the young one in the room. I'm 18, selling, licensing my first technology for $1 million, and like I'm in a boardroom full of guys that look like my grandfather, right? And they're like looking at me like, are we really like, is this if we're really buying this technology from like this kid, right? And it was just, so I always have felt this like I'm too young, I'm too young, I'm too young. Now like I have a 4-month-old daughter and a wife, and like I'm 30, and I'm starting to like feel like I need to ditch that I'm too young thing. I don't know. Did you feel like that? That was like a hell of a rant. Maybe we'll edit that shit out.
I get that. And what's interesting in my position, it's something that's a blessing these days, but it was a curse for a long time, is that I look very young for my age. And so, I started a consulting firm in Los Angeles, and I was, maybe 25. And I would do things like be sure to wear my glasses as opposed to my contacts, and dress probably a little bit better than most people in the meeting, just to be taken more seriously. And so I see that with a lot of the young people that work for me, and I'm very much aware of the fact that I have the ability to influence a young person's kind of opinion of the company and about the way we do things. So I very cognizant of being sure to treat everyone equally and making sure to take the time for everyone regardless of age or status. Just because, like you said, I was used to being the brat in the room. I was used to being the young guy in the room, whether I was or not, whether I just looked it. I remember being in that room and having those same grandfatherly like people question the fact that we're signing over this $100,000 contract to this person.
Right.
So, I think those past experiences definitely inform the way you act as a leader in a company.
Yeah, and I'm definitely breaking out of my shell recently, especially with this whole podcast, because it's just I realize that I am over this young thing, and that the people I'm looking at now that are, I go on Crunchbase, right? You look at the people who are getting funded, and I'm like, oh my goodness, they look like my little nephews.
Oh,
They're so
yeah.
young. Look at them. There's no way somebody gave them $5 million. Oh no, they're gonna make so many mistakes with that. I hope they have a good advisory board.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, you see so much of that. And we went through 500 startups, and you go to an accelerator program like that, and you see the entire gamut. There's the small startup that's two kids in college that just have a great idea, and they don't have any idea of how to build product. They have no idea about even how to go find technology partners to help them build it. And then you have the opposite end, which is you have startups that are 4 or 5 people in their 40s who have been around the block a few times, and they have resources and they have networks. So seeing both of those sides, it's really interesting. It's perspective. It's like traveling, right? The more places you travel to, I think the better you understand any given individual. And so the more of these companies that you see and that you take the time to speak with these individuals, the more I guess arrows you have in your quiver to deal with any sort of situation. And so with the young folks who work for me, or who we might come across, it's always great to like you said, anthropomorphize and put yourself in that situation, and understand what might be going on in their heads.
Yeah. I mean, because it boils back down to when you're doing that, you're just caring about people, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
your products, you got a great UI team over there because they're very pretty. I like them. Very professional. What do your offices look like? Are they modern, clean, professional, open? What do they kind of look like?
Yeah, we actually just moved into our first office that is not a co-working space. We were bursting at the seams at a WeWork for the last 2 years, and now we have this incredible 10,000 foot space in downtown Denver, a couple of blocks from the ballpark. And so one of my business partners, David Champion, he has an architecture degree from Cambridge. So given the opportunity to design an office space, he was just like champing at the bit to make it happen. And I got to say, he knocked it out of the park. It's modern industrial space, wide open uh, work areas with sit to stand desks. We have no offices, no execs get their offices. We don't, again, meritocracy, we don't believe in that. We don't believe that just because you're senior, you deserve to have this private space. All of the breakout rooms are available to anyone who can use them. We provide all the, not crazy. We're not crazy on the perks. We don't provide every snack you can imagine, but coffee, kombucha, cold brew, a couple snacks here and there. Generally speaking, making it a very cozy place to spend your day.
Yeah, so when I had to get an office for because I have a 4-month-old daughter. I have a nice home. Like I built an office in my home, but we my team was very remote for software development, all in the United States, just like California, Connecticut, things like that. So we didn't have much need to have a physical office. But when you have a 4-month-old baby and you're doing a podcast, the Yeti will pick up the screaming from any corner of the earth. So we had to get an office. So I was looking and I found one that was like, it had a giant open space, right? Like 1,800 square feet, and it was a giant open space. I was like, ooh, this is really, really cool. And then when I went to go set it up based on the need, I didn't necessarily think in my mind, oh, let's go do what everybody else does and go buy the standard looking desks that everybody else has. I'm talking about like the older stuff, not the cooler stand up ones. But what my thought is I've worked at home almost my whole life, even when I've had companies with 60, 100 people, because I like to control my environment and then go into the craziness. And that's just me personally, right? That's just how I like to live my life. So when I designed this office, I designed it to be like a house. So I went to a home furniture store, and my office kind of looks like a 1-bedroom apartment.
I'm sorry, I might have missed a question there.
Oh,
You said your office was like 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all had the small space.
somebody interrupted you and asked you a question, didn't they?
No,
No?
I got distracted for a second. I'm sorry there, Joel.
Oh, no worries at all. It
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. I'm
So
assuming there's editing involved in this podcast.
oh, no. This is how it rolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely editing. So I guess what I was saying is that I designed my office to be like a cozy home as well. We went to like a home furniture store and furnished it like that versus like the standard. Everyone gets like little desk and stuff. We have a giant table that we work at.
Yeah, we have that too. That's a big part of what we have is communal work areas,
Mhm.
is how we refer to them. I'm actually um, sitting in one of our 5 conference rooms right now, but the one to my left has a outdoor motif. So it's kind of paneled with log looking panels, and there's just couches and a little kind of faux fireplace situation that's real cozy for everyone to kind of hang out in there. We have big tables in the kitchen that people could sit at together. We have our big conference room in the back that has a ping pong table in it that doubles as a conference room table. So there's definitely a lot of that. But I find that, as you grow the organization and you have, at this point we have our developers, we have our product people, we have our CS people, we have our sales people. They all have very different needs. And, our salespeople are on the phone all day long. They're at their desk standing, or they're pacing, or, whatever. So having a mixed use space has been a great idea for us. Like really being able to provide people with a variety of different sorts of environments in order to work in the best way they can.
Fantastic. That's like what you want to do. You want to create an environment that's productive. Now, when you have, we were talking about the stigma of like being young. Well, there's also a stigma that is in the cannabis industry that everyone kind of has these pictures that pop into their head about what your business may be like simply because of the fact that you're in that industry. So is it like what they think, or is it different? You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, that's something that a piece of advice that someone gave me very early on when I joined the cannabis industry was that you're going to run into 2 different kinds of business people in the space. You're going to have your businessmen who happen to work in cannabis, and you're going to have your cannabis people who happen to be in business. And you want to work with the former and not the latter. And that's like some of the best advice I've gotten since starting in this industry, because if you think about the cannabis industry, it's been black market for decades, right? And you have these people that surely they've done a great job with the limitations that they've had, but then as soon as legalization happened, everyone thought they could just kind of flip a light switch and go legit and run a business. But truth be told is, it doesn't really work that way. And in the early days, there was a lot of that real kind of small business trying to straddle that line of legal versus illegal, black market, white market. And a lot of the old habits died really hard. With us, we came in from the very beginning knowing that we wanted to do everything on the up and up. We knew that we were in a very precarious situation coming into an industry like cannabis. You're really under a microscope. Everyone wants to make sure that you're doing everything on the up and up. So we were very, almost even like overly eager to be able to show everyone that that was the case. As I mentioned earlier, this industry, it moves so quickly that the fact that we've been around for as long as we have, and that we've just continued to be responsible and grow and show that you can build a software company in the cannabis space and have it be no different than a software company anywhere else. I think that's been a real kind of saving grace to what we've been doing here. And over the last few years, we've seen a lot, most of those companies I was referring to, the smaller companies that were just kind of black market cannabis business people that try to go legit, they've suffered one of 2 fates. They've either been rolled up into a larger organization, or they've, been, they're no longer in business. So the maturation of the industry has been very interesting to watch, especially in the last, let's call it, 12 to 18 months. You start to see, Sand Hill Road VC Capital coming in. You start to see executives from the Gap, from Target, from Walmart, who are now jumping ship and coming to work in the cannabis industry. I mean, one of our clients in Washington State, the CEO is a former VP at Starbucks. Right, you have these sorts of individuals who are coming into the industry, and they're really legitimizing a lot of what we've been doing for the last few years.
Well, it's kind of like when the ball starts rolling and everyone's kind of looking around. Are you guys joining in? Are you guys getting on? And then is this publicly acceptable? It's like, can we do this? And then once it hits scale, everyone's like, yeah, we have. And then you all of a sudden it becomes a thing to have cannabis tech or cannabis something in your portfolio.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, we always say that the first one through the wall is always the bloodiest, right? The first
Oh,
ones who come out and do it are always going to be the ones who take the most hits. And we've definitely had our share. Just like any other startup, we've been in situations where we're close to running out of funding, or where, we lost a crucial portion of our customer base, and, you start to wonder, is what you're doing the right thing? It causes me to think about timing quite a bit. I think about the timing of getting into this industry and how it was such a narrow window for us. Had we started 6 months later, we would not be nearly as relevant as we are. Had we started 6 months sooner, we probably would have run out of funding at a couple of points. So, it's amazing that the timing has played such a big role in what's happening in this industry.
Of course, and then you have the timing of your industry and being able to make. I think it's a lot about you too making the decisions, right? Because it's the timing of the industry is one thing, but the micro decisions that you make on an everyday basis is also what keeps it going in the right direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
And I think that, go
sorry,
ahead.
your ability to see and analyze what's happening in the market and respond to it is like the most important thing.
No, yeah, no doubt that that's been something that's it's been one of our better skills to be able to identify, even just based on what we were talking about earlier, when we figured out, oh, the online ordering is going to not grow at the pace that we thought, and what we really need to focus on is our ability to help them retain customers, right? Being able to say, yep, this is happening right now, this is what we should be getting after. That's really a skill that's been, endlessly valuable for us. And again, going back to that whole ego conversation, having the ability to say, let's be self-aware. Is what we're doing the best thing? Is there something we could be doing that would be better for our customers? And the ability to say, okay, maybe we weren't right, maybe we need to shift, maybe we need to pivot. That's been one of the things that's kept us going this long.
I've got some fun questions for you. So I got
Sure.
your picture up. Like I can see your face. It's awesome because you do look young. And if you see me, I always say, oh, I'm 30 going on 16.
Yeah.
Like when I went to my photographer, when she did like the pictures for the whole show and everything, I said, get some that, don't make me look like a grandfather, but like get some that don't make me look ultra young. Cause if the right angle, I can look 18.
Yeah, I can see
Right.
that. Yeah, I saw your LinkedIn profile picture. I kind of had the same thought that crossed my
Right.
mind.
And sometimes I see it as it's almost like a edge up in some cases because I get grossly underestimated when
Oh,
people just write
absolutely.
me off. Oh, he's a kid. I'm like, yes, please. Yes, I am. I'm a kid and I don't know anything. That's where we're gonna go as we walk into this negotiation.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And the counterpoint to that is, having 20 years of experience in the industry, for me, like, people will underestimate me and you can say, oh, actually, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years. And that will kind of put the shoe on the other foot.
Yeah. You look like a musician. Do you play music?
I don't, but it's
No.
funny. I do have a lot of guys who work for me who do. I've seen that correlation in my entire career. A lot of really good developers play music.
Yeah, I play music. I play guitar, and I play a little drum. I've been playing guitar for like, I don't know, 6 years, but I've been playing drums for like the past year and a half, and I really like that little piano and stuff. But man, music is. We started listening. I'd never listened to techno before. Like obviously, I knew what techno was, but we had never really listened to techno before. And then about 3 days ago, Jake started playing techno in the office, and I was like, "Oh man, this is great background music for working if it's the right type of techno."
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm all over the map on music.
Yeah.
Techno is great for programming though. Anything without vocals, anything which is kind of like a constant beat and without vocals is great for programming.
Yeah, and running too. Like
Yes.
it's really great for running. But and like you said, I mean, I'm very very diverse in my music. Just to give you some like real talk, there's this new movie called The Greatest Showman. Have you heard about that?
Oh yeah, I've been wanting to go see that actually.
So that's like actually like my hometown. The whole guy, like his whole story.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they actually use the elephants to make the bridge that connects one of our land areas to one of our islands.
What is your hometown?
Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, okay. I've been to Sarasota. It's been years ago, but yeah, I've been to
Yeah.
Sarasota.
Yeah, they got
I had
popular.
no idea.
They got popular because the economic development center got us listed as like the number one or two beach in the United States or the world or something, and then that just made our tourism go insane. Yeah.
That's great.
But
Yeah,
all
I
these
mean, I think.
years, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. This is awesome.
No, I was just going to say about Florida. I think, Florida strangely has a strong connection to the cannabis industry. It's a lot of the companies that were the early stage technology companies in cannabis came out of Florida because Florida has, from what I understand, a disproportionate number of pharmaceutical companies in the country. And there's a lot of locations that are in developing and producing pills. And a lot of the seed to sale software that you're seeing now, which is what the regulatory compliance software is referred to in the cannabis industry, are adaptations of similar software that was happening for pharmaceuticals in Florida.
Well, yeah, and so many people retire here.
Yeah.
They move their companies. I mean, you go out on a Friday night, you go to a bar like at 7 or 8 o'clock, and you'll find every other person in there is, a 60 to 65-year-old retired person, multimillionaire, move their company down here when they want, just to go into a place to do some work, and we have a lot of medical stuff. Obviously, if you have an older population, you're going to get a lot of medical stuff, and then a lot of medical companies too. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the medical marijuana market in Florida is going to flourish, in my opinion. It's gonna do so well. I mean, I don't know how much you've been looking into this, but uh, the data shows that in states where you legalized medicinal marijuana, opioid overdoses dropped by approximately, I think it's 23%, because people start moving away from pharmaceuticals and start moving on to more natural medicine. And I'm not here to really like be that advocate for marijuana as medicine. I think there's plenty of people doing a very good job of that. But it really is kind of amazing when you see the numbers. And I think Florida will definitely benefit from that.
I tend to be a human, and when you start, you know, saying things like you can't collect rainwater or you can't grow certain things in your garden, and the government like I'm not a fan of being told what not to do, provided it's like a basic human thing, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah, I'm with
that's,
you on that.
yeah, just like me as a person in general. But I Oh, The Greatest Showman. So I'm diverse in music as well. I just kind of wanted to embarrass myself a little bit because 2 or 3 days ago I had a morning dance jam session with my wife and my 4-month-old daughter to the soundtrack of The Greatest Showman, and it was quite fun.
I would imagine. I mean, I imagine any dance party with a child is always fun. They make everything more fun, don't they? Like you look at them and you say to yourself, I should be having as much fun as this small person is having. Um,
Yes. And every time I'm having a bad, like anytime I'm getting, distracted or something's going on, life, I'll just run in run home, run up to her and like tickle her, and she'll laugh, and I'll be like, oh, this is nothing else matters.
exactly, exactly. I don't have any kids of my own just yet, but I have a couple of nephews and a niece, and so I get my fix from them whenever I get a chance. But I completely agree. It really puts things in perspective.
I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. You like that guy?
Yes, I like a lot of things about Elon Musk. He's a pretty hard guy to keep up with these days, but I think you know it's amazing what he's been able to accomplish in a lifetime. He's accomplished in a lifetime what most people couldn't accomplish in three.
Right.
So it's something to look up to for sure.
And I wanted to know if there's a this is a cannabis question because I'm not in a state where it's legal. So, or I'm not in a state where it's whatever it is to where you can just go buy it. I
Adult
think,
use. It's adult use, Joel.
what's the term?
Adult use.
Adult use. So you used another term the other day too when we got on the call, and you said consume. It's like you used it in a way you're like, yeah, we consume. I'm like, oh, that's like a thing people say. Got it.
Well, you know what's really interesting about that? Just to go off on a tangent a little bit,
Yeah.
we talked about how when starting in the cannabis industry, there's a tendency for people to dismiss you because of the fact that they think you're a pothead or they think you're always high. And so, one of the tools that you need to use in order to just to remove that stigma is to use more appropriate verbiage, right? So we shy away from the term marijuana. Marijuana is a pejorative term. It was the name comes from the fact that it was Latin Americans mostly who were consuming at the time when prohibition happened, and it was meant to disparage those users. Cannabis is not. Cannabis is the actual name of the plant. We use the term consume so you don't find yourself saying, well, I smoke this or I smoke that. Because, and also just because of the way that the product, the market is matured, we're not talking about just loose bud. I mean, loose bud is great, and there's people who really enjoy that. But there are topicals, there are tinctures, there are edibles, there are so many different ways of consuming that's kind of become the go-to terminology.
Yeah, well, especially when you're in an area where when it is legal, and then you have more options.
Oh, absolutely.
I think there's like one option in the place I live, and
well, yeah, we joke about how back in the day, what weed used to be binary. You either had weed or you didn't have weed.
yes.
And nowadays, it's there's definitely a lot more variety out there to choose from.
Is there a variety of like called the Red Planet, and like sort of like an ode to Mars or Musk or anything like that?
I wouldn't know. It's amazing how many strains are out there and how many products are out there. It's impossible to keep up with it.
Have you seen anyone with red hairs? I've seen ones with orange hairs. Have you seen one with red hairs?
Strangely enough, I am red-green colorblind, so I am the wrong person to ask that question.
Yes, that is so great. Here's a marketing idea for a cannabis company, and I'm going to strike marijuana from my vocabulary. I want them to create one with red hairs, or take one with red hairs, and then brand it. It's for developers, and I want them to call it Raspberry Pi.
I like that. That's good. We're gonna have to work on that one.
Yeah,
I'll talk to some people. We'll make it happen.
push that through, because oh man, I'm not kidding you. The sales would just you take a picture of that and you run it on Instagram or something to developers and like that, like Adreno Raspberry Pi hashtag, and the orders like,
Oh my God. That is actually a fantastic idea. There is a strain I happen to know called cherry pie.
ooh.
So I'm sure it's just a matter of, and there are raspberry named strains. So we'll get a cultivator to cross those breeds and we'll get going on that right away.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And then I'm gonna fly out, by the way.
There you go. You can be here for the initial run on the product line.
Thank you. Thank you. So you're speaking on the 27th in San Francisco, is that right?
That is actually not San Francisco.
Nope.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, my mistake.
Yeah. They're doing this great event. It's called Tech on Broadway. It's part of a larger event, which is Night on Broadway, which is kind of turning out to be, from what I understand, Los Angeles' version of South by Southwest. The Night on Broadway is really more to celebrate the arts, and then Tech on Broadway is the tech portion, much like you're seeing at events like South by Southwest. So yeah, I'm speaking on a panel on cannabis tech on the evening of the 27th. Which is really great. As I was mentioning to you the other day, it's nice when we get the opportunity to represent in a non-cannabis specific event. Obviously we spend a lot of time at events for the cannabis industry, and I'm not even sure how many people understand how big those events can be. We had MJ BizCon in Las Vegas in November, and I think something like 13,000 people attended, or something along those lines. So to get the opportunity to speak to a non-cannabis specific crowd is fantastic, because it doesn't feel like you're shouting into an echo chamber. We all go to these cannabis events, and we're all very much of the same mind. We all want legalization. We all want to continue the progress that we've seen in the industry. But when you go to these other events, it's you get a lot more people who are blank slates, and they don't really necessarily have their mind made up about what they think about it. So to be able to represent and show the rest of the world that we aren't a bunch of stoners, that we aren't all just like getting stoned in the office, that these are that we're legitimate software companies, and that we are no different than any other software company that they might run across. Those are events that I really love speaking at.
Yeah, and I like that I like that old people die. Because to be just blunt, sometimes my mind just says what it is. And because like every day it gets easier just to be you, like it just gets easier and easier and easier just to be modern. And I know, we're definitely a decade apart, but we've done like a lot of fighting to sell the future to the old guard, and then watching the internet remove the old guard, and then watching them like retire and get out. Like they're not out all the way, but they are definitely 10 years closer than they were last decade, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's weird because when you're talking about tech, it's a different old guard, right? Like me coming out of school in 2000 and kind of jumping right into the startup world, or .com world rather. It's, I feel very lucky that I was born at a time to where I could do that. I've seen multiple bubbles. I've seen what happens when you get over exuberance in the tech industry. And I feel really lucky about that. And you look at, some of the younger folks that work here, that work for me, and, they haven't known a world without the internet, right? So
Mhm.
it's really weird to see like how those two worlds can collide and like how we can learn from each other. But when it comes to like cannabis, what's actually very interesting is that having the older folks is beneficial for us these days. We have a lot of the baby boomers who, might have gone to Vietnam, who smoked in the 60s and 70s, who, really liked it. Then they got serious about their lives and they went and pursued a career and they went and had a family. And now they're retired and they're kind of like dabbling again. They're getting into the new cannabis culture. It's nostalgic for them. They're like really enjoying coming back to it, and also just being blown away by the advances that have happened in the last 40 years.
Yeah, and when I was just thinking, I want to segment not on age with old guard, but with mindset. I've got very good friends who are VCs who are 70, 72, 73, and they think like a 35-year-old. It's not their
Yeah,
age, it's the way that they think. The
yeah,
like
agreed.
what you were saying with the like one of the mindsets would be that you can only progress because of the amount of time you've physically been present at the organization. Like that's a segment that's dying, and I'm excited about that dying.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more about that. We talk about that. We talk about, also I think the way that you interact with the people that you work with, in a lot of ways, at other organizations that were more old guard organizations, I wouldn't have nearly the close relationship that I have with my employees because of the fact that I should be senior leadership and I shouldn't be fraternizing with these people, right? And I think that's all BS, quite honestly. To not be too cliche about it, these people are my family. I spend so much time with all these individuals, and to not be able to interact with them in that manner, I think would be a travesty.
I have an etiquette question about consuming. So um, it's not awkward to have it's actually kind of positive to have a like a keg in a co-work space, and it's always there, but people will only go grab it and tap the keg on like a Friday afternoon. Does that does that translate to cannabis?
That's a really good question. There are companies here who promote the fact that they allow consumption at work. We have never been one of those companies. We do have a fridge full of beers, and as you said, everyone just knows that you don't open that fridge before 5 or 5:30. Like you just don't. You don't drink
Right.
during the day. You don't. It's counterproductive to the work that you're doing. And the comparison that I like to make is that if I worked at Jack Daniels, I wouldn't be taking hits off of a fifth all day long either, right? Like I wouldn't do that just because I work in that industry. So there are some parallels. There's in that we do not allow consumption at work, but if it's after hours and someone steps outside with a vape pen, I'm not going to stop them. If it's 5:30 or 6 o'clock and it's a Friday and someone wants to go outside and share a few hits off of a vape pen with someone, sure. It's your Friday and enjoy it. And I'll be inside, having a beer, and maybe someone else will go outside and do that.
I'm very much looking forward to the conversation being over of like, is it legally? What's the word? You gave me the word before. I've already forgotten it. What's it when it's legal? Adult
Adult
use?
use,
Adult use.
adult
Okay.
use, yes.
All right. I wrote down maturation. I wrote down pejorative, and now I'm going to write down adult use. Yeah, adult use, not a musician. Okay. So the I forgot the question. What were we talking about? I was writing.
We were talking about consumption at work,
Oh,
all that.
yeah. So I stopped. I started. I've started consuming when like around 20. I consumed for the first time around like 22, 23, and just because a couple of friends, and that was actually the very first time that I was like introduced to it. Like I knew what it was, but that was the first time it actually came up in like my life in the real world, right in front of me. So I was like, cool. I'm a life scientist. I try things. Like I'm interested in to know what this is all about. And then I was like, it's no big deal, right? And then, casually.
Did you feel lied to in that moment like I did? Like when you first consume and you're like, this is no big deal. What the heck is everyone talking about?
Yeah, I was like, I can't believe it's such a big thing. Like, because you've seen like politicians get roasted for it, like in high school, they consumed, and like it's like they're villainized for it, and I'm like, this is like kind of fun a little bit.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so it was very interesting. Then off and on recreationally with friends, when the time was right, just very similar to going out and like drinking a little bit on a Saturday night, like not getting hammered, just like having a beer or two and like hanging out, right? And so then I found out that like that whole concept existed, like you can consume too much, right? Just like drinking. And then so like off and on recreationally for fun. And it's very not addictive by any means. So anyone that says it is just like, okay, that's crazy. And what I found was when I had my daughter, when my wife had become pregnant, I was like, you know what? It's the act of the smoke itself. And I've been out to San Francisco quite a bit for conferences and things like that. And I had experienced edibles and all that good stuff. And I was just like, you know what? It's like a beer that you can't get in your state. It's like I'm not gonna go there just to get the beer, but if I'm there, I'll have a beer. And like, but it would be nice if this beer was sold in my state so that every once in a while I could go grab one. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable.
I mean, it's reasonable, and it's I want to talk about one thing you mentioned, which is very interesting in that the variety of product that's available to you to where you can consume to your comfort level, right? I mean, it's much like alcohol. Some people have a really high tolerance level, some people don't, and the maturation of the market has led to all these products that are targeted towards different individuals, and having the adult use legalization happen means that opens up to everybody. And also what happens that's very interesting is that you realize that what used to be called the medical market was never actually the medical market, because it was needing to take care of everybody's needs and desires. Whereas when you have adult use and medical, what you start to see is that the medical shops end up really specializing in what will truly help someone who has a medical need for the plant. And then when you end up in the adult use section is really kind of like a rainbow of everything else. Everything from super low dosage stuff to, the more, heavier sort of like, put you out sort of stuff that some people really enjoy, but it gives you the opportunity to identify where you fall in that spectrum. Whereas when the market's illegal, it's like we were saying earlier, it's kind of binary. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah, it's like alcohol. You can go get the medical grade stuff, or you can go to a bar.
Yeah, but actually, it's really interesting. There's parallels when during alcohol prohibition, right? You couldn't find low alcohol level, um, you know, liquor back then. It was, everyone was trying to get as much as they could get for as much bang for your buck was really what everyone was trying to get. And the same thing happened during marijuana prohibition, and that everyone was trying to get the biggest bang for their buck. When you no longer have to worry about scarcity of product, it opens up opportunities for a variety of desires. And I actually just read an article yesterday, which I thought was very interesting, about how they're predicting that once California gets up and running, one of the largest demographics they're going to have is millennial women, strictly because of the fact that millennial women right now are the largest consumers of wine in the country. That demographic is the largest consumer of wine, and they understand that, much like a lot of people will want to go home and have a glass of wine to unwind, a lot of people want to go home and consume a little bit of cannabis to do the same thing. And so, it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out and see if that's truly the case.
I never thought about that, but right when you said it, I was like, everybody I know that drinks wine as a female. Like
Yeah,
for real.
it's
I'm not just saying that. Every human I know that brings up wine is like, I'm thinking about right now. 4 girls went through my head. Just kidding. My wife's listening. Next topic. No, just kidding. But yeah, everyone I can think about, it's like it's always the girls going and getting the wine. The guys usually go for the liquor. the guys I know.
Or the beer. I mean,
Or the
but
beer,
like
liquor or the
it's
beer, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But I think in a lot of ways, people, moving away from that whole stigma of, everyone who smokes marijuana or cannabis or pot, whatever you want to call it, like wants to get rip roaring stoned and high, and that's just simply not the case. When you look at a market like this that's had it around for a little while, you start to have. Well, one of the things that's really interesting to me, having lived here for 3 years and change now, is it's become totally normalized for me to have a conversation about cannabis with anybody. Whether it's a friend, someone at work, or someone at a bar, just talking about, oh, have you tried X, Y, and Z? Have you been to this dispensary? Have you seen that? Then you have someone from out of town come to visit, and they get thrown into one of these conversations, and just like the look of awe on their face is amazing to see every time, because of the fact that it's just not normal where they come from. People still talk about it like an illegal drug, and they talk about just like weed, and to throw that person into an elevated conversation about the nuances of one strain versus another, versus a product versus an edible versus a topical, to see them be thrown into that situation for the first time is endlessly entertaining.
They have topicals. That's new.
Yes.
That's news for me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
funny because
actually.
I have no problem saying, hey, did you try that new root beer, which is, by the way, something I very much like. I just, welcome to my world. I'm learning new things. My brother just introduced me to root beer.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Like
Yeah.
hard root beer? That sounds
Yeah,
great.
I tried 4 brands, and like one of them was amazing and the other 3 were like, eh. So, but yeah, there's no shame. There's no like my inside doesn't tense up when to go talk about it and be like, hey, Roger, you try the Not Your Father's root beer or whatever, and you're like, yeah. But when I don't want to say, hey, Roger, did you try the new raspberry pie strain?
Yes, not yet. You don't.
Not yet. I don't. Right.
No, it's true. I mean, it's adjustments that every market goes through, with the exception of probably California. I mean, California's had some form of medical marijuana laws on the books since 1996, right? So it's already been pretty normalized there. But in markets like, especially Colorado, being in the middle of the country, I think it was something that took a little while for people to get used to, and now people are very used to it. Hey,
Excellent.
Joel,
Well,
I'm
yep.
sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to know how much time we have left. My battery's dying. I can
Yep.
go
No,
get a cord.
we're just wrapping it up right now.
Great.
Yep,
I,
we put our little flag at like 1 hour max. So I'll be up there as soon as you get that raspberry pi manufactured, coming out there.
Sounds great, man. Sounds great. I wanted to know if there's any information you can give me around when this might air, et cetera, et cetera.
One second, Jake. What do you think? Your thing's on the 27th.
Yeah.
I'll have time before that.
What do you think? What day is the 27th? It's a Friday,
Saturday.
Saturday. So we'll do it on our Friday. Wednesday. We'll do it on our Wednesday.
I'll have it out.
We'll do it on our we'll release it on the Wednesday.